Lucien's champagne reflected a rifle scope no one else had noticed. I stood beside him beneath the cathedral's white gold lights while 200 armed guests watched us exchange vows intended to end a war. Incense clung to the air, sweet and smoky over the colder scent of polished marble. Beyond the stained glass windows, bells thundered across the city. Each toll sounded less like a blessing than a deadline. The Cross family occupied the right side of the nave in black formalwear, Lucien's family filled the left in silver. 10 years of bloodshed sat between them, temporarily restrained by silk ties and concealed holsters. My father had given me one instruction before the doors opened: marry the Omega, or bury another 100 men by winter. Lucien approached the altar without lowering his eyes. Ivory fabric traced his narrow frame, and a pearl pin held his dark hair away from a face too composed for someone being traded as part of a ceasefire. Everyone had described him as sheltered, obedient, politically harmless. Yet when the officiant asked him to place his hand in mine, his palm was steady and cool. "Do you accept Adrian Cross?" "I accept," he said. "Not surrender." "Accept." The distinction caught beneath my ribs. I slid the ring onto his finger. Applause rolled through the cathedral, loud enough to cover the soft click from the upper gallery. Lucien's gaze flicked toward my champagne flute. In its curved surface, the opposite balcony appeared as a warped band of gold, and inside it, a pinprick of white light settled over my chest. His thumb pressed once against my knuckle. Then he stepped closer, turning us a quarter circle as if overcome by nerves. The movement placed a stone column between me and the gallery. "Your pulse hasn't changed," I murmured, smiling for the cameras. "Should it have? Most sheltered Omegas tremble at their weddings. Perhaps you were misinformed about me." The officiant continued speaking. Lucien adjusted my boutonniere, his fingers brushing the coarse black wool of my jacket while his eyes remained on the reflection in my glass. He had seen the shooter. I knew it with the cold certainty that had kept me alive through 3 ambushes. But he neither shouted nor pointed. Instead, he lifted the flute from my hand and let it fall. Crystal shattered across the marble. Gasps rippled through the nave. Lucien recoiled with flawless embarrassment, and 4 guards moved instinctively toward us, blocking every clean line of fire. "I'm sorry," he whispered. His cheeks colored on command. The rifle scope vanished. I could have stopped the ceremony. Exposing the gunman, however, would have shattered the ceasefire before our rings were warm. Lucien had made the same calculation in less than a heartbeat, and protected the alliance without revealing what he knew. I covered his hand with mine. "No harm done." The words earned relieved laughter, but his fingertips tightened against my palm. Someone in the gallery slipped through a service door. Lucien watched the door close, then turned back to receive the family blessing as though nothing had happened. By the time the bells fell silent, the marriage was legal, the war was paused, and my freedom belonged to a stranger whose helplessness had just looked like expert theater. At the cathedral steps, cameras flashed hot and white against my eyes. Lucien leaned into me for the official portrait, carrying the faint scent of cedar beneath his ceremonial perfume. "You saw him," I said through my smile. "Saw whom?" "The man who came to kill me." His expression never shifted, but his gaze moved past my shoulder. 3 hardened cross enforcers stood there. The instant they met Lucien's eyes, each man lowered his head. "Careful, husband," Lucien murmured. "The dangerous question isn't what I saw." His hand closed around mine as the crowd cheered. "It's why your own people let him inside." Cold rain silvered the windows of the Cross estate, and the tires of Lucien's car whispered over wet pavement toward the servants' quarter. From an unmarked sedan 2 lengths behind, I watched my new husband leave the protection assigned to him, dismiss his driver, and enter a shuttered tailor shop through a side door. The brass bell above it never rang. I followed through an alley smelling of diesel and soaked brick. Inside, sewing machines sat beneath white dust cloths. A radiator clicked in the dark, warming air heavy with wool and machine oil. Lucien stood before a cutting table with a strip of paper in his hand. Rows of meaningless numbers had been written between fabric measurements. He read them once, held the paper over a candle, and burned it in a metal tray. Dock 9, he said. The eastern shipment has been moved forward 40 minutes. Tell them the cross patrol changes at midnight. A broad man by the shelves reached inside his coat. I pressed my pistol against the base of his skull before the weapon cleared the lining. Two others emerged from behind a velvet curtain, their knuckles scarred, their jackets hanging around shoulder holsters. None of them looked surprised to see Lucien. Step away from my husband, I ordered. Lucien turned slowly. Amber candlelight caught the edge of his cheekbone, but not a tremor passed through his hands. You were easy to hear, he said. Cross shoes have steel heels. The broad man glanced toward Lucien. One small movement of Lucien's fingers made him lower his weapon. The other two bowed their heads immediately. These were not servants obeying a sheltered omega. They were dangerous men awaiting permission. Who taught you that cipher? I asked. People who bury anyone careless enough to write names. Lucien crossed the room and removed my pistol from the broad man's reach without touching my hand. His thumb checked the safety with practiced ease before he returned it grip first. And you know cross-patrol schedules. I know the rules that keep men alive when powerful families decide rules are optional. Footsteps sounded outside. Lucien extinguished the candle, seized my lapel, and pulled me behind a rack of unfinished suits. Blue light swept beneath the door as a cross-security car rolled past. He did not hide behind me. He positioned himself between me and the entrance, one hand beneath his coat, listening until the engine faded into the rain. Then he stepped away. You gave my security team a false destination, I said. I gave the traitor watching them one. Lucien took a black ledger from beneath the cutting table. Several cross routes had been marked in red, but only information available inside the estate connected them. He tore out one page and placed it against my chest. The sniper entered under a cross authorization. Tonight, someone changed your patrol to see whether you followed me alone. You did. The men around us remained bowed as Lucien opened the rear exit. Until that moment, I had believed I was hunting him. Instead, he had chosen the route, the room, and the witnesses, forcing me to see the authority concealed beneath silk and ceremonial perfume. Rain blew through the doorway, cold against my face. Stop searching outside your walls, Adrian, Lucien said. The person preparing your grave eats at your family's table. He walked into the alley without waiting for permission. Behind me, the broad man finally raised his eyes. Do we follow him, Mr. Cross? I looked at the door swinging in the wind and understood the question was not whether those men served my husband. It was whether I was ready to. Truck engines growled beneath the sodium lights of Pier 9, their exhaust mixing with river fog and the sharp smell of diesel. By midnight, Adrian stood beside the lead vehicle while sealed crates crossed the wet loading yard toward 3 cross-cargo trucks. Lucien waited near the rear convoy car in a pale wool coat, playing the obedient spouse Adrian had ordered to remain under guard. Metal chains rattled. A forklift reversed with a shrill electronic beep. Then every floodlight went black. The first gunshot struck the pavement beside Adrian, spitting concrete across his shoes. Cross guards drew their weapons toward the warehouse roofs, but muzzle flashes erupted from behind the stacked containers instead. Bullets punched through the lead truck's windshield. Defensive positions. Adrian shouted, dragging a wounded driver behind an engine block. His men obeyed, yet the trucks trapped them in a narrow lane with attackers firing from both ends. The ambush had been built around cross procedure. Lucien's guard seized his sleeve. "Stay down." Lucien twisted free, stripped the pistol from the man's holster, and fired twice at a suspended cargo lamp. Glass burst overhead. Its swinging beam illuminated a gunman advancing along the eastern catwalk. Lucien dropped him with one controlled shot. The soft-spoken Omega from the cathedral vanished without ceremony. "Drivers, reverse trucks 2 and 3, Lucien ordered. Turn them outward and build a wedge." No one moved. Rain hissed against hot engine covers as Lucien leveled the stolen pistol at the chain securing a loaded crane pallet. Now. The chain lock shattered. Crates crashed between the convoy and the western shooters, creating a barricade of splintered timber. Adrian pushed himself upright. "You heard him. Move." Engines roared. The drivers reversed in opposite arcs, transforming the trapped convoy into a shielded corridor. Lucien crossed open pavement before Adrian could stop him, coat snapping behind him in the cold wind. He slid beneath the middle truck, emerged beside a fallen guard, and exchanged his pistol for the man's rifle. "West team, 3 rounds above the blue container. Force them east. Roof team, hold fire until they cross the crane shadow." The commands came without hesitation, precise enough that hardened cross enforcers followed before looking to Adrian. Adrian took the eastern flank, firing into a steel railing to drive 2 attackers down the stairs. Lucien anticipated the movement and closed the trap. "Rear car, advance 20 feet. Headlights on." White beams flooded the escape lane. The ambushers broke formation, finding rifles aimed from 3 directions. Within seconds, their remaining shooters abandoned the pier and disappeared beyond the freight yard. Silence returned in fragments, dripping rain, ticking engines, a guard strained breathing. Every cross truck remained operational. Every living member of the convoy stood behind cover Lucien had created. Adrian approached him through water streaked with broken glass. "Where did you learn to command a kill box?" Lucien removed the rifle magazine, cleared the chamber, and handed the weapon to its stunned owner. "Some lessons keep a person alive. That wasn't survival." Adrian glanced around as his men lowered their guns. "That was command." One of the senior enforcers stepped forward, blood darkening his sleeve. Instead of reporting to Adrian, he bowed to Lucien. Then another did the same. Lucien's jaw tightened. His exposed authority could not be returned to hiding. From the lead truck's radio came the voice of the Cross Estate dispatcher, cold with urgency. "Mr. Cross, the council has received footage from Pier 9. Return immediately, and bring your Omega for questioning." Adrian kept his eyes on Lucien as red security lights began pulsing across the rain. The convoy had survived, but command of it no longer belonged to him alone. Lucien placed the empty pistol in Adrian's palm and closed his fingers around it. "Decide before we reach the estate," he said. "Are you taking me home as your husband, or delivering me as your prisoner?" Rain hammered the stained glass windows of the cross council chamber, and cold white light spilled across the black marble floor. By the time Adrian entered with Lucien beside him, the surviving convoy had been secured below, but the smell of burned rubber still clung to their coats. Armed guards closed the bronze doors behind them. At the far end of the chamber, Adrian's father stood beneath the cross crest, surrounded by council members whose tablets displayed frozen images from Pier 9, Lucien holding a pistol, Lucien directing the trucks, veteran enforcers bowing to him. "Your husband will surrender his weapons and submit to questioning," the patriarch said. Alone. 2 guards approached. Adrian stepped between them and Lucien. His boots struck the marble with a clean, final crack. "No," a murmur passed around the crescent table. One councilman enlarged the footage until Lucien's face filled the wall. That Omega seized control of Cross soldiers during an armed attack. He kept them alive. He possesses classified knowledge. Then questioned the officers who ignored his orders until I backed him. Adrian removed his sidearm and placed it on the table, grip facing away. The metal landed with a heavy clang. You do not lock up the person who saved our convoy while the traitor who arranged the ambush remains inside this house. His father's signet ring clicked against the tabletop. Your authority comes from this family. Tonight, that authority failed every man at Pier 9. Silence followed, broken only by rainwater ticking through an old copper drain. Lucien did not plead or reach for Adrian. He stood motionless beneath the council lights, his damp sleeves concealing the hands that had commanded an entire battlefield less than an hour earlier. The patriarch touched the security panel. Adrian's credentials vanished from the chamber display one by one: tactical command, estate access, family accounts, convoy authority. Effective immediately, you are relieved as air commander. You will surrender your seal and leave this estate before midnight. Adrian pulled the cross seal from his finger. A pale band remained beneath it. He set the ring beside his weapon, then removed his radio and access card. With every piece laid down, the guards shifted farther from him. And Lucien? Adrian asked. Stays for interrogation. This time Lucien moved, but Adrian caught his wrist before he could step forward. He leaves with me. Then you leave with nothing. Adrian looked once at the crest carved above the council, turned his back on it, and led Lucien through the bronze doors. At 11:47 p.m., they crossed the estate's iron gates on foot. The November air cut through Adrian's wet shirt, and behind them the locks engaged with a mechanical thud. No car waited. No cross guard followed. Lucien took Adrian's discarded phone, snapped the tracking chip beneath his thumbnail, and dropped both pieces into a storm drain. Then he pressed 2 fingers to the rusted call box outside the gate in a sequence too fast to memorize. A dark sedan emerged from the rain without headlights. Get in, Lucien said. Adrian studied the unmarked doors. Where are you taking me? Somewhere your family cannot reach. The sedan carried them beneath the city, through a freight elevator hidden inside an abandoned subway terminal. Hot metal and engine oil replaced the smell of rain. When the steel doors opened, amber lights revealed an underground command floor lined with maps, encrypted radios, sealed armories, and silent operatives who rose as one. Not one of them looked surprised to see Lucien. Adrian, stripped of every cross privilege, watched his Omega walk into the center of the room. Lucien turned, removed a concealed key from beneath his wedding band, and placed it in Adrian's palm. You gave up your house to keep them from taking me, he said. Now you're standing inside mine. The steel key grew warm in Adrian's palm while ventilation fans hummed behind the concrete walls, pushing air scented with oil and hot circuitry across the command floor. One by one, the operatives withdrew through soundproof doors until only Adrian and Lucien remained beneath the amber lights. A section of the far wall slid aside with a hydraulic hiss. Inside waited a narrow room of black steel, its center occupied by a scarred desk and 2 chairs. Lucien entered first, removed his wedding ring, and pressed it into a recessed lock. Screens awakened around them, washing his face in cold blue light. Every display carried the same silver emblem, an evening star crossed by a blade. Adrian had seen it on confiscated shipments, sealed intelligence reports, and the citywide warrant naming one criminal more dangerous than any rival family. Vesper, Adrian said. Lucien set both hands on the desk. That is the name they fear. No guard stepped between them. No weapon appeared in Lucien's grip. Instead, he opened a drawer and placed a pistol before Adrian, turning the handle toward him. Then came a thick paper file bound with red cord and a portable drive engraved with the cross crest. And Lucien? Adrian asked. The only name that was ever mine. Lucien entered a code. Photographs filled the screens, altered security rosters from the cathedral, payments routed through cross accounts, and surveillance images of Adrian's father leaving a private clinic under armed escort. A medical report followed. The patriarch's recent collapse had not been natural. Trace poison had been introduced through medication stored inside the Cross estate. Adrian moved closer. The room's chilled air sharpened the smell of paper and gun oil as he turned pages bearing signatures from men who had served his family for decades. At the bottom lay an order authorizing Lucien's capture and promising Adrian's command back if he surrendered Vesper before dawn. You arranged this offer, Adrian said. I made certain it would reach us. Lucien's voice stayed level, but his bare thumb rubbed the pale mark left by his ring. You abandoned your name without knowing mine. I will not ask you to remain beside me without knowing the cost. He pushed the file, the drive, and the pistol within Adrian's reach. Turn me in. Your accounts will reopen. Your soldiers will return. With this evidence, you may also save your father. A red indicator blinked beside the encrypted transmitter. One touch would send the base coordinates and Vesper's identity directly to Cross Security. Lucien stepped away from the desk, surrendering the controls as completely as he had surrendered the weapon. Adrian inserted the drive. The final recording showed Lucien refusing payment to join the plot, then warning that any attempt on the Patriarch would bring Vesper's entire network against the conspirators. The Notorious boss had not targeted the Cross family. He had been quietly holding its executioners back. Adrian removed the city warrant from the file. Its embossed seal crackled between his fingers. He held one corner over the small flame burning beneath the desk's emergency lamp. Lucien caught his wrist. If you destroy that, there is no clean road back. Adrian looked at the hand stopping him, then at the wedding ring beside the lock. There wasn't one when I walked out with you. He lowered the paper. Fire raced across Vesper's printed face, curling the warrant into glowing black flakes. Adrian then crushed the transmitter beneath the pistol's steel grip. Sparks snapped against the desk, and the red indicator died. Only after the last ember faded did he return Lucien's ring, sliding it onto his finger himself. I'm not here to judge the man the city invented, Adrian said. I'm standing with the man who trusted me with the truth. A warning tone suddenly rolled through the base. On the nearest screen, a secure channel opened and displayed a live image of Adrian's younger brother bound to a chair. Behind him, a masked figure raised a card marked with Vesper's silver star. A distorted voice filled the cold room. At sunrise, the boss chooses what his empire is worth. A digital clock burned 1:07 a.m. above the command floor, its red numerals cutting through the cold blue light of the monitors. The ventilation system whispered overhead, carrying the smell of hot circuitry and bitter coffee as Lucien stepped to the central console. Adrian remained beside him, watching the live feed of his younger brother bound beneath a bare white bulb. Open every channel, Lucien said. No one moved. Around the steel tables, operatives who had bowed to Vesper now stared at him as if the order had arrived in a foreign language. Lucien placed his palm on the biometric plate. Silver lines spread across the glass, unlocking maps of docks, warehouses, accounts, and smuggling routes built over 10 years. Effective immediately, Vesper's network is dissolved. Protests broke across the room. Lucien silenced them by transferring ownership of the Eastern Shipping Corridor to the captor's encrypted account. One route vanished from the map. Then another. Adrian caught Lucien's wrist before he could authorize the third. The tendons beneath Lucien's skin were rigid, his wedding ring cold against Adrian's thumb. If you surrender everything, they can still kill him. Then make certain they cannot. Lucien turned the console toward him. You know cross-extraction protocols. Bring your brother home. The choice shifted between them without ceremony. Lucien would pay, Adrian would command. Adrian studied the hostage feed, then ordered the remaining operatives to embed a silent verification demand inside the transfer. Not a tracker, not a trap, proof of life. The masked captor responded with a second camera angle. Adrian's brother lifted his bound hands and tapped 2 fingers against the chair, the cross signal for conscious and uninjured. Release the first vault, Adrian said. Thick locks rolled open behind armored glass. Bundles of currency, bearer bonds, forged passports, and black ledgers filled the chamber under amber security lights. The air smelled of paper, dust, and machine oil. Lucien entered alone, removed the silver star seal from his finger, and pressed it into the authorization slot. 10 years of wealth flowed away in less than 3 minutes. With each confirmation tone, sections of the base went dark. Operators collected personal bags and departed through the subway tunnels. Some touched 2 fingers to their brows, others refused to look back. No one was ordered to stay. By 4:42 a.m., the once crowded command floor held only empty chairs and cooling screens. The captor transmitted coordinates beneath an abandoned freight overpass. Adrian led the retrieval while Lucien remained at the dead console, stripped of the surveillance reach that had once covered the city. Dawn mist clung to the concrete when Adrian found his younger brother alone, wrists tied but breathing steadily. No gunfire followed. No ambush closed around them. The final transfer had purchased exactly 1 life. When Adrian returned to the base with his brother supported against his shoulder, Lucien stood before the last illuminated map. Adrian's brother crossed the floor and gripped Lucien's forearm. You gave them all of it. Lucien looked at Adrian instead. What I built was replaceable. The final screen chimed. Payment accepted. Every silver route disappeared, leaving the city map black. Then the masked captor's symbol dissolved and a cross-family crest appeared in its place. A voice, no longer distorted, spoke through the empty room. Now that Vesper has nothing left, let us see whether Adrian will sacrifice his family for him. Cold blue light leaked from the dead city map while ventilation fans hummed beneath the floor. The cross crest remained on the final screen, its gold edges sharp against the black glass. Adrian's younger brother stared at it, then touched the bruised skin around his wrist. That voice, he said. I heard it before they masked it. Lucien crossed to the console, his shoes whispering over concrete. He did not search for another hidden clue. Instead, he opened the archive he had withheld for 10 years and placed his palm against the biometric lock. You heard Marcus cross. Adrian went still. Marcus had stood beside him at funerals, taught him to shoot, and called him son whenever Adrian's father was absent. Lucien projected 3 records across the wall, payment orders bearing Marcus's private authorization, dispatches that had redirected cross-shipments into Vesper territory, and the original command ordering both organizations to retaliate after each staged attack. The room filled with the dry clicking of decrypted files. He built the war, Lucien said. Every cross-body was blamed on Vesper. Every Vesper route destroyed was blamed on your family. When your father began asking questions, Marcus arranged the poison and offered me a place in the succession. Adrian read the refusal attached beneath Lucien's signature. Vesper had rejected the assassination. Marcus had answered by issuing the citywide bounty that turned Lucien into its most notorious fugitive. The truth did not absolve everything Lucien had done, but it gave 10 years of bloodshed a single architect. Adrian's brother leaned against the steel table, breathing through his teeth. If we take this privately to the council, Marcus will bury it. That is what he expects, Adrian replied. He removed the cross signet from his pocket, the seal he had surrendered, returned only by his brother after the rescue, and set it beneath the scanner. Lucien caught Adrian's wrist before the transmission opened. His fingers were cold, the faded scent of smoke clinging to his sleeve. Once this leaves the room, your family will not call it justice. They will call it treason. Adrian turned his hand and closed it around Lucien's. You gave me the truth when it could have destroyed you. I won't hide it because it can destroy me. He authenticated the cross-emergency channel. Screens across the abandoned base flickered awake, carrying his face into council chambers, guard stations, family residences, and every secure cross-terminal still connected to the network. Adrian released the records in full, Marcus's payments, his orders, Lucien's refusal, and the unaltered audio of the ransom demand. Then Adrian addressed the family without raising his voice. Marcus cross-manufactured this war, poisoned our patriarch, kidnapped my brother, and used Vesper as his shield. Anyone who destroys this evidence declares himself Marcus's accomplice. Replies struck the console almost instantly. His aunt renounced him. 2 council members branded Lucien's files fraudulent. Cross-security erased Adrian's remaining family credentials, and the signet beneath his hand flashed red before splitting along its central seam. The public cross-registry removed his name from the line of succession. Lucien watched the deletion reflected in the black screen. Adrian did not look away. He routed the evidence beyond the family servers, sending it to every crew, broker, and neutral house Marcus had manipulated. A final connection opened without invitation. Warm amber light revealed Marcus seated in Adrian's father's chair, one hand resting on its carved oak arm. The familiar voice carried no distortion now. You always were too willing to bleed for what belonged to you. Adrian stepped closer to the camera. Lucien does not belong to me. But I stand with him. Behind Marcus, armed cross guards closed the chamber doors. Marcus smiled and lifted Adrian's broken nameplate into view. Then come home and stand beside him while I pass judgment on you both. The feed went dark, but a red location beacon remained pulsing on the screen. Marcus was no longer hiding, and every cross weapon in the city was turning toward Adrian and Lucien. Rain hammered the cathedral's copper roof, each impact rolling through the nave like distant gunfire. Beneath the white glare of security lamps, Adrian knelt on the execution platform with his wrists locked behind him, the cold iron biting through his sleeves. Marcus stood before the cross-patriarch's chair while armed guards lined the stone aisles and underworld delegates watched from the balconies above. Incense could not hide the sharp odor of wet wool and gun oil. Adrian Cross confessed to conspiring with Vesper, Marcus announced. His death will restore order. A guard raised his weapon. Adrian lifted his chin toward the western gallery. Then why did you jam every signal except your own? Marcus's smile tightened. Somewhere behind the walls, a relay clicked. The cathedral screens flickered, showing Marcus's orders to poison the cross-patriarch, seize Adrian, and execute him before the family could vote. Murmurs spread beneath the vaulted ceiling. Marcus struck the control panel, but Adrian had already triggered the internal operation plan before his capture. Cross guards wearing silver cuff links, the last officers loyal to Adrian's younger brother, turned their weapons away from the platform and sealed the exits. Marcus seized Adrian by the collar and pressed a pistol beneath his jaw. You surrendered your succession for an Omega. The cathedral doors opened with a groan of ancient hinges. Freezing rain blew across the marble, carrying the scent of smoke and cedar. Lucien entered alone in a black coat, empty hands visible. Not an Omega, Marcus called. A fugitive with no empire. Lucien continued down the center aisle as delegates reached beneath jackets and guards tracked his steps. The empire was useful, he said. The name is what they feared. He stopped beneath the altar lights and removed the silver clasp at his throat. Vesper's black-winged insignia caught the glare. Recognition moved through the balconies faster than any command. Brokers stood first, followed by captains who had bought safe passage through Lucien's former routes and operatives Marcus believed he had purchased. Chairs scraped stone. One by one, they rose for Vesper. Marcus's grip shifted for a fraction of a second. Adrian drove his shoulder backward, knocking the pistol aside, then rolled from the platform as the loyal guards closed around Marcus. Lucien reached the steps and caught the discarded weapon, but he did not fire. He placed it at Adrian's feet instead. Your judgment. Adrian looked from the weapon to the man who had murdered his name, taken his inheritance, and turned his family into an army. Then he kicked the pistol across the marble. He answers alive. Marcus lunged for the execution switch. Lucien intercepted his wrist while Adrian severed the platform's power cable, plunging the scaffold into darkness. Emergency lights washed the nave crimson. Metal restraints snapped open under the code Adrian's brother had supplied, and Marcus was forced to his knees before the same chair from which he had claimed power. Phones rose throughout the galleries, broadcasting Lucien's uncovered face and Vesper's insignia to every criminal house in the city. There would be no mask to reclaim, no quiet life to return to. Adrian stepped beside him as the rain hissed across the threshold. Around them, the operatives who had once served an unseen legend lowered their heads, not to a symbol, but to Lucien. Beyond the sealed doors, sirens multiplied, and messages flooded every screen with the same demand. Now that Vesper had shown his face, would Adrian's husband rule the underworld again, or become its most valuable target? Cold blue light spilled from the delegates' phones, sliding across wet marble and the abandoned execution chair. Beyond the cathedral doors, sirens wailed through the rain while incoming messages rattled every device in the nave. Adrian looked at the offers filling the nearest screen: protection in exchange for Vesper's routes, alliances sealed with blood, fortunes promised for Lucien's location. Lucien reached for the phone, but Adrian closed his hand around it first and dropped it beneath his heel. Glass cracked sharply against stone. No more bids, Adrian said. Not for his empire. Not for him. A cross officer approached with Adrian's signet and the credentials Marcus had stripped from him, offering restoration if he reclaimed leadership before the assembled families. The gold ring caught the emergency lights, bright and cold. Adrian did not touch it. Instead, he crossed the aisle to Marcus, removed the cross signet from his godfather's hand, and placed both symbols of succession on the execution chair. The family will be governed by its surviving council, he ordered. My brother will oversee the transition. Marcus stands trial before every house he betrayed. The officer lowered his head. Marcus's restraints scraped across the marble as he was led away alive, his protest swallowed by the bells beginning to toll above them. Lucien remained beneath the red emergency lamps, his uncovered face reflected across hundreds of screens. Former operatives waited for a command. Rival bosses watched from the galleries. After 10 years of ruling through masks and whispers, one sentence could have rebuilt his empire. Lucien removed Vesper's insignia from inside his coat. Its black metal felt warm from his body. The routes stay closed, he said. The vaults will repay the families Marcus used against one another. Anyone who served me is released from oath and debt. A murmur traveled through the cathedral, soft as wind through dry leaves. Lucien set the insignia beside Adrian's abandoned signet, surrendering not merely power but the identity that had once kept him alive. No throne remained between them now. Adrian drew Lucien's wedding ring from his pocket. Scratches crossed its surface from the night he had returned it and chosen his husband over his rank. Instead of taking Lucien's hand, Adrian held the ring on his open palm. At our wedding, they gave you to me to stop a war, he said. Rain-cooled air moved through the shattered doorway, carrying the scent of stone, candle smoke, and Lucien's familiar warmth. I won't claim what was never mine to own. If you wear this again, it will be because you choose me when neither of us has an empire left to offer. Lucien looked toward the galleries where enemies had memorized his face, then toward the doors opening onto a city that knew his name. At last, he picked up the ring himself. He slid it onto his finger, turned Adrian's hand over, and pressed their palms together. "I was notorious long before I became your Omega," Lucien said. "I survived by making everyone fear what belonged to Vesper." His thumb settled over Adrian's pulse. "But Lucien belongs to no one. He chooses you." Adrian raised their joined hands before the delegates, not as proof of possession, but as a vow made in full view of every danger waiting outside. The bowed heads that followed belonged to neither Alpha Heir nor Hidden Boss, they honored two men who had surrendered the right to rule each other. Dawn broke through the stained glass, washing the marble in gold as Adrian answered, "Then stand with me, not behind me, not beneath me, and never as mine unless you say it first." Lucien's ring flashed between their clasped fingers. "My Alpha," he said, and for the first time, "my Omega," meant the same thing, not ownership, but a choice they would keep making freely.